Hello, welcome to WD18, the Watford fan channel. Welcome to a packed show here on WD18. Myself and Sam will be taking a look back at what in the end was a disappointing defeat for Watford. I think it was a 96th minute winner from Davinson Sanchez from a Son free kick. Heartbreak for Watford after defending so well throughout the game. We're going to be discussing that one and who played well and what we can maybe build on that for performance and what we could actually take away from it as well. We've got to discuss the Emmanuel and Ismaila Sarr AFCON situation. We're going to be talking about that. I mean, there's been a lot, Sam, in the press about whether Watford were right to do that, but I think there needs to be a few things that to be cleared up in this video, particularly from a Watford standpoint about how we've acted in this situation. And then we're going to be taking a look through some of the new signings. According to Adam Leventhal, we've agreed deals for Nice left back Hassane Kamara and AS Eupen defensive midfielder Edo Kayembe. And just this evening, according to reports in Brazil, Watford are set to sign Udinese centre-back Samir, who's a left-footed centre-back. So that's one to keep an eye on in the coming days. And then finally, we'll discuss any questions that you have in the comment section. Sam, I do apologise. That was a really long intro. How are you?
No, it's I'm all good. It's been, do you know what? It's been, we haven't done a video over the New Year period, so happy New Year everyone as well. But also, I mean, it's just been a ridiculous week. This time last week we were all looking back on that 4-1 West Ham defeat. We've had transfer talk. We've had the whole Emmanuel Ismaila Sarr situation. We had the Tottenham game, and we seem to be closing in on a few signings as well, which is a promising end to what could be a. I know we don't have a game on. We do have a game at the weekend, but it's not really that important. I don't think. I think a lot of fans are sort of viewing this as an international break, so to speak. But what could be a season-defining sort of period for the football club in terms of bringing names in.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And as Sam said, Happy New Year to everyone who's watching at the minute. Charlotte, regular Happy New Year, guys. Just a shame we couldn't have started 2022 with a point. And Sam, look, I think that's the best place to start is that Spurs defeat. We didn't do a video yesterday, but I don't know from your perspective, mate, but I'm still not coming to terms with the defeat because I think when you ultimately play the way we did, you are leaving yourself open for a last-minute winner in that fashion. So I wasn't particularly surprised that we lost the game, but I think for us to put so much into the game and put in one of our best defensive performances, it did hurt coming out of Vicarage Road because we were that close to getting a clean sheet and we just can't seem to buy one at the minute. So I think there's positives and negatives to take away from it. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, there's definitely positives and negatives to take away. I think in terms of something I haven't questioned this Watford side for is that there's heart to this team. There's a real sort of desire. They're always fighting. I think with the exception of a couple of games. I think West Ham, I think they were a bit off it. I think that's probably coming back from COVID. But on the whole, I think they have really shown a fighting attitude. I think, and I said this to you on the phone after, I think when you're giving 100% and you're still losing games like that, it comes down to a problem of quality. And you have to say that, all right, I didn't think Tottenham were amazing the other day either, but it just came down to the fact that they had that extra bit of quality. We switched off at the crucial moment. All right, you could say it was a brilliant ball in by Son, I think it was. It was a really good ball in. I saw an angle from it from the lower Graham Taylor where just the whip, it makes it very difficult to defend. But at the same time, it was the way we gave away that free kick. I think you could argue we probably should have pushed up a bit higher as well. Just really, really frustrating. And I didn't really feel, as soon as we gave away the free kick, I was just thinking, here we go. And I sort of braced myself for it straight away. It was very typical Watford. But as you say, there are certainly positives to build on as well. Definitely more positives than negatives to take from it.
It's that little look to the person next to you, whether it's your dad or someone you don't know, and you're like, we can see the year. The amount of, especially like back in the Championship days when we weren't, particularly good, the amount of times those sort of games, you just throw them away. But no, I think you're fair with your assessment there, Sam. One, I think just to analyse that goal, because obviously that was the crucial moment. That's the moment that people are going to remember from this game is people are being critical of Juraj Kucka for that tackle to give away the free kick. Look, I think Juraj is a very honest player. So I think he's limited in areas, but also, he does give 100%. So how critical are we of him in that situation? Because it's difficult, especially when there was a stoppage. Watford have put a lot into the game. As you know, mate, when you play Sunday League without the ball, your legs feel even heavier when you're not actually having a lot of the ball. So it was clearly tired legs, but it's those fine margins, isn't it, in the Premier League that you just can't see. You just can't do that, can you, at this level?
Yeah, look, I mean, there are just before I talk about Kurtzko, there's just two sort of things I want to talk about with this. Firstly, thoughts to the fan who unfortunately fell ill during the game, but I mean, it's just unfortunate things where we're not really getting the luck we need. I think that's the second time it's happened. Against Chelsea, we were on top, and there was that lengthy stoppage. I think without that stoppage the other day, I think we probably would have gone on to get something from the game, whether we win it or get a point. I think it really made us struggle. And I think an element of that was because of how tired the players were in the formation we were playing. I thought it was a back six most of the time. It was 4 centre halves with left to right. It was Messina, Troost-Ekong, Sarr, Craig Cathcart, with Ken Semmer at left wing back and Edo Kayembe at right wing back. So Edo Kayembe automatically is playing in a position he's not familiar with. I know we saw him at right back the other day, but he's now playing as a right wing back, where he was also at times pressing quite high up the pitch, and I thought he was outstanding. I actually thought he was probably as good as he was against Aston Villa on the first day, considering he was playing in a position he wasn't familiar with. And I think ultimately, I can't remember who was running at him. Was it?
I think it might have been. If I remember, I haven't watched the highlights, but I think it might have been Son.
Yeah, it might have been Son. And I think we've all been there. Sunday league plays, five-a-side, whatever, where you just dangle a leg out. You're absolutely exhausted. So I understand it is really frustrating, but I'm not gonna, if it was after half an hour or 60 minutes, I think I'd be way more frustrated conceding a sloppy free kick like that. But in the circumstances of him playing out of position after the lengthy stoppage, everyone gave 150%. I don't think we can really fault any performance. I can understand why it's happened, as frustrating as it is.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment, Sam, in terms of, when I watched that game at the weekends, there was no player on that pitch that wasn't giving it their all. Now, don't get me wrong, there are players in this Watford team, I think we all know, who people watching at home who know they're probably not good enough to play at the Premier League. But I think we've seen it in the past, particularly in that 1920 team. There were certain names, as you've said, Sam, where you felt that they were so-called bad eggs, or maybe weren't that committed to the cause. But I don't feel with this team, Sam, that there's any players who stand out as, bad eggs, or you feel like they're not giving it 100%. Yes, they might lack quality in certain moments, but ultimately you feel like they're giving all for the club. And I know that's a basic, and that's as fans, we expect that from a lot of players, to give 110%. But I don't think we can look at any player, can we, and pick them out for not giving it their all.
100%. And I think 1920 season, I'd say, up until Xisco Munoz came in the Championship, I think it was a lot of the time it was an attitude problem. Players simply, perhaps wanting moves away the previous summer, not getting those moves, or simply not turning up for the fight. I think this Watford side has shown fight, has shown commitment to the cause, and I think, even in games where we haven't got results and the performances have been disappointing, such as the Brentford game, at no point was it an attitude problem. And I think that's where it ultimately comes down to quality, which is where this January transfer window is absolutely massive. As I say as well, we also need to be getting a bit more luck. I think obviously you earn your luck as well, but as I say, we had those 2 stoppages in those games against Chelsea and Tottenham, which I think lost the games for us. I'll go as far as saying that, because I think particularly against Chelsea, we were really close to scoring, I think, and then the game stopping really helped Chelsea. So I think we do need a bit of luck as well. We obviously need results to go in our favour, but we also need an upgrade in quality. And if we can sort of add that to, I think, what seems to be a positive morale in the dressing room, I don't think heads are really dropping that much, with the exception of a couple of games. I think we've got a real fighting chance with Claudio Ranieri as well.
Yeah, you mentioned Ranieri there, Sam, just on that Tottenham game. You also mentioned the 6 at the back system that, on paper it was all actually a 4-4-2, wasn't it? As Kutska as that right midfielder, very similar to under Kike, actually, I thought, in terms of the way we set up. But it was deep, with Kutska playing as a right wing back, and then Semmer playing as a left wing back. And it clearly was the tactic from Watford to basically let Emerson Royale have a lot of the ball. There were times I was screaming at Ken. I was like, Ken, mark Emerson Royal. But I think Ranieri had told him specifically to leave him, because that was ultimately the way that we were going to stop Tottenham.
Because it's also because of the amount of times it happened. It's something that if it happened first time, Ranieri would have said to him, "You have to get closer." But the fact he kept on doing it probably shows it was an instruction from Ranieri more than anything else.
Mate. Absolutely. And what I wanted to kind of go in on, Sam, is the way we set up. Did you understand what Ranieri was trying to do with the way he set up against Spurs?
Yeah, Yeah, I think so. I think if I'm being honest, it looked like we were playing for a point. I mean, against any of the big six teams, the first thing you have to do is make sure you're protecting your own goal and making sure you keep a clean sheet. Um, and we've seen a couple of exceptions to that. The Man United game in particular, I think we sensed blood there. But Tottenham were a team in form under Antonio Conte. I don't think they've lost in the Premier League yet. They're looking solid at the back, and I think that we were probably playing for a point. And I think that sort of reflected in Josh King and Emmanuel Dennis's body language. They weren't really running in behind as much as we've seen previously. They weren't pressing as much previously. We were really just trying to keep our shape. And I think that Emmanuel Dennis and Josh King, both of them were absolutely, they were working their socks off. I thought they were working really hard. Not too sure why Dennis came off at half time, but João Pedro, when he came on, looked the part as well. Really, really good performance for him again, going right to the top. So I can understand what Ranieri's game plan was in terms of playing for a point. And perhaps I think the worrying stat that still is hanging over us is the clean sheet. And I think it probably is psychologically getting to the players a bit more now as well. And I think that there's an element of Ranieri now looking at this side and going, we're going to have to score 3 goals to win any game. So he's going to have to change it now and look to perhaps nick it by 1 or 2 goals if we can.
Yeah, I think it was Lou Orns actually put a tweet out about like the worst defenses in the top 5 leagues. Now, obviously, it's you've got to take it in context. The league some of the teams are playing in, but Watford were bottom of that list or top, if you were, for the worst defence. And I think it was something like expected goals against 1.8 a game. So as you said, Sam, you're looking at around 3 goals every game. Standard for us to actually, even get a point out the game, which is frustrating. And you can see why Ranieri's trying to do it. I think the frustration for me, Sam, is not really. I think the game plan was very close to being executed to perfection. If we got a point at home to Spurs and it was 0-0, you'd take that every day of the week. But I think my frustration was on the break in the first half, we didn't offer a lot because King and Dennis were dropping quite deep and they're picking the ball up quite deep, which is something I've picked up on over the last few games. But it seemed, as you mentioned, it seemed to change when João Pedro came on because he was getting closer to King for the second ball. And was it really actually in respect, and I know why he started Dennis, but was it a game for Dennis? Because I personally think the change was tactical. I didn't see an injury. But I think Dennis you could see he was getting visibly frustrated. The fact he was getting the ball either really out wide, he was feeding off scraps. He wasn't actually that far into the opposition half. If anything, he was on the halfway line. So was it actually a game for João Pedro, as we saw in the second half, where he was feeding off King and winning those second balls?
Yeah, I think it's easy to say that in hindsight, in terms of Dennis has been absolutely on fire this season, our best player, by a country mile, you could argue. So I think it's easy to say in hindsight it was more of a game for João Pedro. I'd say Pedro's a better ball carrier. What he can do, as we've seen, is he picks the ball up from deep and can run at that Tottenham defence, as we saw in the Championship as well when he picked the ball up from deep. And I think we saw the prime example of that was when he got pulled back on the edge of the box and the ref blew for the free kick when he could have cut inside and scored. So
how did he do that? That was shocking, referee.
Really, I mean, do you know what? I watched the highlights back and I didn't pick up on it in the game, but I think Tottenham should have had 2 penalties as well. So I'm not gonna call out the ref too much because I think it all balanced out. He didn't have a good game at all, but I think it'll be harsh to say we should have deserved.
Did you think it was a penalty on Pedro?
I thought it was penalty on Pedro, but I also thought it was penalty on Eric Dyer, and I also thought it was penalty on Harry Kane. I thought both of those were also penalties. I think there should have been 3 penalties and none were given. I thought the ref had a shocker for both teams. So it all balances out. However, so going back to João Pedro, he's a better ball carrier than Emmanuel Dennis. But Dennis is ultimately a better finisher. So it's easy to say in hindsight that it's a better game for João Pedro, but I think they're both exceptional talents and both would have offered us different things, albeit Dennis was very isolated in the first half.
Sure. Just a few players to pick up on. I thought that Imran Louza, I thought he was brilliant. Classy operator, isn't he, Sam? I think, technically on the ball, he's our best midfielder. I mean, his positioning's really good. I think he's great in that deep line midfield role, which, unfortunately he's off to the African Cup of Nations. So we're gonna miss him in that hole. But I think in terms of interceptions, he was really high. Tackles, he was high. His passing, I think he completed 21 passes out of 25 in a team which, I felt was giving the ball away quite easily. how impressed have you been since he's come in? I think he's a lot of Watford fans now, and let us know in the comments, but they're starting to pick up on, how technically good this guy is.
Starting to pick up on your on your season predictions. Visionary stuff. I mean, I'll admit, I remember it was Brighton away, the second game of the season. I was thinking, what on earth is this guy doing? I think we took him off at half time as well, and he was absolutely shocking. But since he's come back into the fold, I think did he take some time out injured as well? I think he was injured for a bit as well. But since he's come back into the team, he's playing in that deep lying role. He's been absolutely sensational. There's an element of Etienne Capoue to him, and there's an element of Alman Abdi to him as well, in terms of the way he can sort of pick up the ball straight away. He's got the eye for the pass as well. I think I'd like to see a bit more physically from him as well. Ultimately, that's probably not his role as well. We rely on the likes of Sissoko for that. Kutzka when he's playing in the middle. But in terms of him on the ball and his positioning off the ball as well, I think he's really, really good. Really promising player who we're going to miss a lot over the next few weeks.
Sure. Just finally, Sam, we mentioned the back line, and we'll get on to a few names that, pardon me, that have been linked with a move to Watford. Adam Leventhal stated in his piece that the club are backing Ranieri, and they're backing him with some signing, particularly in that back line, with a couple of centre-backs to come in and a left-back to come in as well. But Sam, just kind of looking at that centre-back partnership of Troost-Ekong and Sarr, it was a formidable partnership in the Championship, but it hadn't, number one, it hadn't really worked out in the Premier League because we haven't seen them much together, but I felt there was an improvement. I don't know whether you saw it. Maybe it was just the way we played, which gave them a bit more protection, but I felt like Ekong and Sarr not back to the old ways, but certainly I felt a bit more assured in terms of the back line with those.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't taking it away from any of them, but I think the best way I described it to a friend is we wrapped them in cotton wool, so to speak. I think we didn't really allow, any one-to-one situations with, for example, him in Son or Harry Kane, except for when Emmanuel gave the ball away in the first half. So I think that they did certainly look more assured, particularly in the air as well. I thought that they won pretty much everything in the air. I think that's largely down to Sarr as well, who I thought was magnificent. I think whenever he's come back into the side, it's always taken him a game or two to get back up to speed, but it's so important we keep him fit now as well, particularly with the likes of Nicholas and Kulu coming back in, a couple of centre halves joining as well. I think they're all potential partners for Sarr. And I'll say it again, I don't think Troost-Ekong is the worst squad player. I just don't think he should be starting. Massive improvement from him. I can't state how big the improvement was from him the other day. I know we didn't get the clean sheet in the end, and as I said, I think we protected him a lot more, but so much better, so much more confident. And yeah, I'm really happy for Troost-Ekong.
Top stuff. I think that's where we're going to wrap up the chat on the Tottenham game. Let's have a little look through your comments. We've got a comment here from David Prutton, who says, we get a lot of free kicks in dangerous places, but the lack of quality delivery to make anything of them. He also said,
it's the Watford way that we're never going to score. We had the Messina one last year. We're going to have to wait another 5 years now.
Yeah, it's going to be a while. David also says, we definitely deserve the point against Spurs, but it only takes one quality set piece to undo any side. And as he said, we need a set piece taker. Charlotte says, so has Dennis decided not to go to AFCON as he thinks he's not going to play, or has the club stopped him? Tell us more, Charlotte. We're going to get into that in just a moment. We've got a comment. James thought Dennis was poor against Tottenham. Is this anything to do with AFCON?
I think it was being isolated. I think ultimately as well, something you have to factor in. There are two things. I think Tottenham would have sentenced this as a game to get 3 points, and I think that they ultimately had to open up more in the second half as well, which gave the likes of João Pedro more space. I think if Dennis was on the second half, he would have had that space as well. And I think also in that first half, it was pretty much only King and Dennis going forward. I think Sema and Juraj Kucka hardly crossed that halfway line. So it was really difficult for them to get any service. That's nothing against the game plan, because again, it nearly works, but I don't think it was anything to do with AFCON. He also looked exhausted. There was one point in the first half where I think he was holding his ankle. So perhaps it's a combination of those things.
Sure. Ellis, very good point. Undone by a Son free kick in both games. Yeah, that is very true. Look, Sam, I think there's a few comments about this situation, which is Emmanuel Dennis and Ismaila Sarr. And let us know your thoughts on this in the comment section. So to give a bit of context to it, and I'll try and sum it up the best way I can, Emmanuel Dennis, so actually take it right back. Nigeria changed their manager. So beforehand, Emmanuel Dennis was not a fan of Gernot Rohr, I think, if I pronounced it correctly, who was sacked as the Nigerian manager. And they've brought in a new head coach for the African Cup of Nations. I think it's an interim appointment, actually. Now, obviously, with Dennis's form, he's behind Salah. I think it's 13 goal contributions, 8 goals, 5 assists. He was always going to get a call up to the Nigeria squad. The Nigerian Football Federation have to send the confirmation of the squad by a certain date. Now, Watford received the email in there, and this has been quoted in a few sources as it being late. Now, what that means is that Watford, they believe, have the power to basically say to the Nigerian Football Federation that Emmanuel Dennis shouldn't go to African Cup of Nations because you haven't sent the email confirmation in time that he's going to be in the squad. Now, Watford have said he wasn't going to go. Nigeria said he should go. And I think that's put Emmanuel Dennis in a situation where he could force through a move to the African Cup of Nations. But he had a chat with the Nigerian manager, and he could not guarantee his game time, and he couldn't guarantee that he'd be a regular starter. So Emmanuel Dennis has chose, and this is the bit to repeat, I think, to everyone who doesn't understand the situation, Emmanuel Dennis has chose not to go to the African Cup of Nations. Now, people are saying that Watford have blocked Emmanuel Dennis in this situation. There is, I guess, Sam, there is an element of they've put themselves in a situation that Emmanuel Dennis, they put the power into their own hands in that situation. Yeah. But Emmanuel Dennis could have forced through a move if he really wanted to. We know that. If it's a major tournament, we all know how big the African Cup of Nations is. And I think to suggest that Watford haven't respected the tournament is unfair, mainly because Nigeria's captain, Troost-Ekong, is going. Peter Atibo would have been going. Ismaila Sarr would have been going had he not been injured. You look at Imran Loser, Adam Messina. Watford, I think, in the Premier League have the most players going to the African Cup of Nations. So I don't think it's a case of Watford disrespecting the tournament. I think they've used the situation into their own hands. I think they've put Dennis in a situation where he's actually found out, and it's kind of forced his hand to find out how much game time he's going to get. And he's found out he's not going to play a lot. So he said, I'm not going to go to the African Cup of Nations. And I guess from his perspective, with the form he's in at the minute, he might think, you know what, actually, if I'm going to play regularly in the Premier League, does that increase my value? We don't know inside the mind of Dennis. But correct me if I'm wrong on anything I've said there. And also, what do you make of the situation with Dennis?
No, you're spot on with that. I think it's no secret that we, as Watford fans, and probably as a football club, were desperate for Dennis not to go to AFCON. So it's definitely worked in our favour. I think what's happened is we've given our side of the story. We've been clear that we don't want Dennis to go to AFCON. Nigeria have said we want him in the squad, however, you're not playing. And I think ultimately what's happened is because of the whole paperwork situation, it was left in Dennis's hands whether he wants to force a move through to AFCON, which I don't think the club would have stood in his way if he was like, no, I really want to go. Or he was allowed to stay at Watford in the Premier League and help us, which, as you say, I think in the back of his mind, I think he's thinking, where will I be more likely to get a big move if I'm sitting in on the bench in Cameroon? I think, I'm not too sure. In the African Cup of Nations, or starting every week in a massive period for Watford, where the spotlight will be on the relegation battle, with our next 2 games being against Newcastle and Norwich. And Emmanuel Dennis will be one of the first names on the team sheet for both of those games. So I think that's where the situation sort of starts and ends with Emmanuel Dennis. I think he was given the choice and he chose to stay with Watford. I think everything's been blown out of proportion in terms of Watford supposedly disrespecting the Nigerian Football Federation. Pundits has been going in on Watford all over the place, saying if this was the Euros, it would never have happened. Well, yes, it would have. I mean, the same thing would have happened, but also you have to factor in the fact that this is happening in the middle of the season rather than in the summer. And Watford obviously going to look after their own interests to the best that they can. And I've got absolutely no problem with what's happened if Emmanuel Dennis is happy to stay. You tweeted this last week, Jake. I think you said if Emmanuel Dennis is happy, then we're all happy, aren't we? So, I mean, it remains to be seen whether it will work in Watford's favour. I don't think Dennis's performance the other day, which was his worst in quite a while, as I said, I don't think it's his fault, was anything to do with AFCON. I just think it was the way we set up and the game we were playing in. But as I say, if Dennis is happy, then we're all happy.
Well, absolutely, Sam. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. But I think that's the bit where I think a lot of Watford fans are frustrated, because ultimately there's almost this tag. I think it was on Sky Sports. I think it might have been Darren Lewis and Kevin Campbell, where they basically said, Watford were out of order for not letting Emmanuel Dennis go. But I think it's just digging deeper from some respects from the pundits. The fact that the way it's been reported, I think, is that Watford have blocked any chance of Emmanuel Dennis going. But actually, if you dig a bit deeper, as I said, you'll find out that, as you mentioned, Sam, it was his decision not to go. Now, ultimately, in a weird way, it's kind of done him a favour, because if he hadn't have known that he wasn't going to be a regular starter, then he could have gone to AFCON, not played, maybe just been an impact sub. And then, that could have completely derailed his whole season when he comes back in the Premier League or whatever. So, Sam, one other player we need to talk about is Ismaila Sarr.
This
now,
was ridiculous.
Nigeria and Senegal fans absolutely hate us at the minute. But so Ismaila Sarr has a knee ligament injury. What game did he pick it up in?
It was Man United. It was the tackle with Donny van der Beek.
Tackle with Donny van der Beek. He's been out for over a couple of months now. And he was going to be injured throughout the AFCON Cup of Nations. But Senegal have decided to call him up, even the fact that Watford have said he's injured. Now, of course, Watford aren't going to let him go to it. Sam, do you want to explain it, mate?
I think what's happened is that we've said, all right, Sarr's injured. They've gone, well, we want Sarr. Then we've gone, but what's the point? He can't walk at the moment or whatever. And they've gone, no, we'll still have him then. And I think what's happened, I think I read somewhere as well, they're not necessarily believing Watford's diagnosis, and they're sending out their own medics to check on Sarr's knee as well. I think as well what's happened is I think Sarr might slightly be ahead of schedule. So I think he could be back training during the African Cup of Nations, which is where Senegal have gone, all right, if we get to the last stage of the tournament, he could be an asset to us. I mean, it'll take him time for Sarr to get back up to speed. With an injury like that, he might never be the same player again. So it's ridiculous that they wanted to call him up, and they're having a go at Watford for not letting him go. I think in Sarr's best interest as well, it's probably not good for him to go either. So it's a ridiculous situation. No idea what Senegal were thinking with that. It's just ridiculous, isn't it?
You know what? For us, I do really feel sorry for Ismaila, because you could see he was targeting that tournament. Come the winter, and it must be really frustrating, especially when you look how strong Senegal's team is. I mean, it's Edouard Mendy, Koulibaly. You look at Sadio Mane. Would have been Sarr on the right hand side. I mean, look, the team would have been amazing, and he would have had they've got a great chance of winning it. So, look, you can feel Sarr's frustration, but ultimately, I don't think we can really. I think people from the outside can't really have a go at the club for particularly the Sarr situation, because that's protecting their player, and that's protecting someone for the medical interest and safety. When we're bringing safety into it, Sam, and player safety and player welfare, that's been very highly documented at the minute, then I don't think anyone can have any complaints about that one. I mean, Freddie makes a good point here. Both Dennis and Sarr should put out a statement on the issue. I guess that would clear up, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's more sort of there'd be more reason for the media to have a go at Watford over the Dennis situation than the Sarr one. I think the Sarr one's ridiculous that anyone's, as I say, compromising the safety of the player to go to the African Cup of Nations. I think definitely Dennis and Sarr should be putting out statements. That's not to say that either of the players have done anything wrong. If anything, that they're showing their commitment to the cause, they're showing their passion for both their club and their country. I think it's probably equally a difficult situation for them as it is for the football clubs, if not even more difficult. I just think to clear it up, show their commitment to Watford Football Club now that they are staying, I think it would be needed for them both to put out statements. I agree with that.
Yeah, Wes thinks the club are protecting them. And Charlotte says, Sarr needs to concentrate on his recovery. Quality time with the physios is what he needs. Is protecting the player and our investment. Absolutely agree with that, Charlotte. Look, we've touched on Emmanuel Dennis and Sarr, and hopefully that's cleared it up for people who didn't know about the situation. Maybe Watford fans who, maybe not Watford fans actually, but fans from other teams who are watching this and wondering about the situation. Sam, look, I think the last segment of the video, we've done Spurs, we've done AFCON. It's now time for transfer rumours. It wouldn't be a WD18 video without any transfer rumours. Now, Adam Leventhal, straight after the Spurs game on New Year's Day, he saved New Year's Day, in my opinion. He released the news that deals have been agreed for Nice left-back Hassane Kamara and KAS Eupen defensive midfielder Edo Kayembe. Now, Edo Kayembe is a DR Congo international, but they're not at AFCON. Hassane Kamara I think he's been playing regularly for Nice. He played in the Europa League last season as well. So this is a guy with caliber. And then we look on Twitter today, and reports are suggesting that Watford have completed the signing of Udinese centre-back Samir, a left-footed Brazilian defender, Brazilian centre-back. And Adam Leventhal also tweeted in his article, which I do really recommend you go and check out, that we're in advanced talks with Besiktas centre-back Domag Vida, and he's another player to keep an eye on. So, Sam, when you look at those players, we're being busy in the early stage of the transfer window. Number one, do you know anything about the players that we've been linked with? And number two, is this a sign of intent that, number one, the club are backing Ranieri, and number two, they're getting it done before Norwich and Newcastle?
Yeah,
Newcastle.
I think that it's. Do you know what? When I saw Adam Leventhal tweeting, I thought it was going to be. I just heard Ranieri's about to be sacked. I thought he'd be gone after the Tottenham game. But it's good, really good to see that they're backing him. And I think that there's no hiding from the fact that we need defensive reinforcements in particular. They're trying to get it done as early as possible. I think that in terms of what I know about them, I remember Vida from the World Cup a couple of years ago, a centre-half for Croatia. I think he was magnificent. A couple of people have said he's a bit past it now, but I think, any help we can get from an experienced player like that will be helpful. He's obviously got a top knot as well, so he'll look brilliant next to Sarr, as always. So I think we'll have. I think Vida will be a good signing. I think Kamara will be a really good signing, particularly at left back. Upgrade on both Adam Messina and Danny Rose, I'd say. And I don't really know much about the others, but from what I'm hearing about the Udinese centre half, what's his name again? Samir is, I imagine it will. People think he fits in a back three. I think on the left hand side of that. So I think what's good about these signings is it keeps us open to both a back four and a back five in case we want to change it. So yeah, certainly really promising signings, and good to see we're getting our business done early.
Sam, just on Samir, the Udinese centre back, where does that leave the other centre backs? Do you think one will go out the door now with Vida coming in? It looks to be with Samir coming in. Hassane Kamara, another left back. Do you feel that we could see a couple of players go out the door? And if so, who do you think it would be?
I think probably the most likely one to move on would be Christian Kabasele. I think if anything, we'd see at least one of Kabasele or Troost-Ekong go to Udinese. I think that's what I could see happening.
I think to Udinese is a great shout.
Kabasele. Yeah. I think one of those two would go to Udinese. I'm not sure which one. It depends on how the window progresses, and I can't see them going anywhere other than Udinese. Simply because I think it will just be a case of freeing up places in the squad, and it will be done late on in the window, depending on where fitness and injuries take us to. Because for all we know, the Watford way, like Nicholas and Kulu, they'll get injured on their debut. So I think it will be I think it will be moves on late on in the window, but I certainly think one of Kabasele or Troost-Ekong will move on.
Yeah, you know what? Speaking of Kabasele, I've just seen a rumour on Twitter from Italian media, from Sport Italia, that Udinese are lining up Christian Kabasele as the replacement for Samir. So it looks like that one is progressing.
100%, I could see that one happening. Yeah.
I did see an article about Nkulu potentially going there, but I think that would be a naive move, wouldn't it? I think we've got to keep Nicholas. He's arguably one of our centre backs. Yeah.
But seen a comment on it, by the way. I mean, we're not going to talk about letting him go, but to see Ben Wilmot's goal today as well. What a goal.
Unbelievable.
Could have done
Wilmot from 50 yards out. Bang.
What a goal. If you haven't seen it, I'd say go on Twitter. It's all over Twitter and have a look at it. It's a ridiculous goal.
Give it a watch. That is a great goal from Ben. Good to see he's doing well as well for Stoke. So Sam, looking at the fact, I have to admit I haven't seen a lot of these guys. I've done the standard, look on YouTube for the compilation, get really hyped up that they're going to be like the next, like in Hassane Kamara's case, the next Roberto Carlos. But genuinely, what I've seen from him, he looks like a really dynamic player, which I think is great for us, particularly when Messina's out at the AFCON Cup of Nations. But Sam, we're bringing in a left back, a defensive midfielder that we mentioned on the channel, two centre backs on the way. What does that say to you about the approach of this transfer window? And do you think we could bring in any different positions to those come the end of the window?
It's difficult to say. I think in terms of our approach to the window, we obviously want to get everything done early and as quick as possible. As always with the Pozzos, it's as cheap as possible as well. I'm not sure how much all the transfer fees are coming to, but I can't imagine it will be too much. And and it could work out. I think that certainly, compared to the 1920 season when we got relegated, I think it's already looking like a better transfer window than that one, because it's players who will come straight in, start, and have an impact. So I think it's certainly players that will upgrade on what we have already, and I think that's the approach. Is ultimately, as Scott Duxbury said in his programme notes, it's players who will benefit Ranieri to his disposal.
Yeah, James in the comment section, glad defence is finally being addressed. Better late than ever. It does feel like it's been a long time.
I mean, it's not. It's clear to say, with the exception of perhaps Kamara, none of them are long-term options either. I think it would just take us to the end of the season, hopefully shore us up, and then in the summer it will have to be addressed again. But I think certainly until the end of the season, I think it could be enough.
You know what, mate? The only one that I feel could be more long-term is Samir, because I think he signed a deal till 2025.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the one where I think a left-footed centre-back, so he'd be a bit more long-term. But with Vida, him being 32, I agree. I think that'd be like a 1-2 year contract. Kamara looks like a bit more of a long-term one. I think that's a very Watford signing, Kamara, and I really hope he can hit the ground running, because £4 million is not. It's a pretty good deal, I think, for Watford. I hope. And Kayembe, Sam, we mentioned it on the channel before about a defensive midfielder. We could see one being brought in. Why do you think we've brought a defensive midfielder in this window?
I think with Emmanuel going, I think we need someone to sort of play in that sitting role. Peter Etebo won't be back for the foreseeable future, as we know, due to his injury. I think we really have missed a Peter Etebo sort of player, sort of that destroyer in the middle of the park who can break up play. I think Luta has done a good job with it, but as I say, I'd want to see a bit more of him physically. And I think Kayembe, apparently he would offer us that.
Only 23, Sam.
23 years old as well. So again, he could be a long-term solution, hopefully. So I'm not sure whether he'd come straight in and start, but I think certainly we have needed a holding midfielder and someone, as I say, who can break up the play and slot straight in there.
Great stuff. Right, just to wrap up, we're going to finish in just a moment, but just have a little look through your comments. Charlotte in the comment section, get the whiteboard out again for a transfer window video, Jacob. Look, if people want to see it, hit a like on the video, and let us know in the comment section. Leave a like and let us know in the comment.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many outgoings we'd have though this window. I think the only one I can think of.
Yeah.
I think as we said, I think one of Cabaselli or Troost-Ekong, I think we'll move on to Udinese. I could see Dan Gosling going back to the Championship. And I can't really think of any others. Sir? Tufan. Oh, terminating the loan. I don't think so. I don't think we would. I think they try and keep him as a squad player, as he is relatively versatile. I think I would have said Daniel Bachmann, but I keep on forgetting we got Okoye coming in the summer. So I think Bachmann will probably move on in the summer instead of in the window. And by the way, he was much better the other day. Massive improvement from Daniel Bachmann. So I don't think we'll see any of our goalkeepers leave.
Ashley Fletcher, someone said maybe potentially out on loan. I still don't really understand that signing. I still haven't got my head around that one. There was a few more comments just to wrap up before we go. Gutted, we let Wilmot go. We'll check out his goal. Yeah, make sure you do. Tommy says surely Danny Rose will be released.
I could see that as well, actually. I was going to say, particularly with Kamara coming in. I think he might be injured, but I think from the whispers in the media, from what Claudio Ranieri said about his fitness as well, I think there's an element of Ranieri giving up on him as well. I'm not saying it's an attitude problem there, but I think perhaps the task was too uphill for Danny Rose to regain full fitness for a Premier League side. Yeah,
I think so. I think as soon as a manager publicly outs you for your fitness levels, I think it's very difficult to claw it back unless you really hit the ground running. But as James said, it would probably cost a lot to release Danny Rose, because I think there probably would be a clause in the contract. So there's a lot to come over the January transfer window, and we'll bring in hopefully a few more players that we confirmed, and also bring you a lot of more transfer content here on WDAT. Just reading the final comments, but thank you very much for watching, Sam. It's been a pleasure. Top man.
As always.
Great chat. Look, I think it's one of those. It was an action-packed show, wasn't it? You know, the Spurs win wasn't great, but ended on a positive note. Kind of just went like that.
Exactly. And that's pretty much how New Year's Day went as well. I mean, we all gutted after Spurs, but I think it was massively uplifting news when we heard they'd stick with Ranieri and back him. I'm missing my first away game of the season, unfortunately, on Saturday. I decided I'm just going to have a week off, considering I'm doing
You're
Yeah,
hardcore, mate. You need to
yeah.
recover.
I mean, I'm doing Newcastle the week after. I'm getting the club coach, which leaves the ground I think 6:30 in the morning. So I think I'm taking the week off.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh.
sure.
Sam, we both love this club, but you are unbelievable. That is
Uh,
phenomenal, mate.
and what's annoying as well, though, is that I mean, it's not annoying because I still do it, but I made the trip to Burnley a few weeks ago, and I'm gonna have to do it all over again in a couple of weeks, whenever that's rescheduled for. So that will be that'll be a good day out.
Just insert the in-betweeners. I like Burnley. I like football, but not Burnley. Top draw. Thank you very much to all the kind comments. Rudy, GT Official, Charlotte, Nick, VJ, absolute legends. Thank you very much for watching. Please do leave a like on the video. Subscribe to WD18. Follow us on social at WD18 Fans. And we'll see you very, very soon. Up the Hornets.